And good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of RedModeling Paint Studios live stream tutorials. Tonight, going to be working on a little bit of Cephalyx Army that you see here in front of me, right here on the camera. It's for those of you who aren't familiar with it, there's a podcast known as Chain Attack. You got Scott, Trevor, and Jay over there. They're a bunch of great guys. They got a great podcast. Check them out if you haven't already. But we all have a friend here locally in Idaho that we all know by the name of Mark, and he's been having some health problems lately. Doctors don't know what's going on, and they don't know what is causing his health to deteriorate, and Mark is running out of options. So we've had some great things come from the Donate or Paint Challenge, and this is one of them. The Cephalyx Army here was donated by someone over there at Privateer Press, and my part of the challenge is I'm going to be painting this army up. So I'll be doing a couple of videos on these every now and then. I'm probably not going to do a full, beginning to end on every miniature. There's about 35 miniatures in the 50-point list, so it'll be a little challenging to do that. But I will be popping these videos up from time to time as I'm working on the paint scheme or as I'm basing. Tonight what I'm going to be doing is a little bit of putty work. I have most of the miniatures assembled to this point, but as you can see on this this big guy here, there's a little bit of a hole in the knee there, right up here in the top shoulder. There's some putty, some gap filling that needs to happen. So little things like this throughout the whole army that I need to touch up, that that I'm going to work on a little bit tonight, and while I am on. Also, something else I'm going to work on tonight too. We got Molg the Ancient here, a project that I've been working on, and I'm going to be starting him up tonight. What I'm doing tonight with him too is basically the same thing I'm going to be doing with the Cephalyx Army. I'm just going to be working on some seam filling and some gap filling, cleaning him up, getting him ready for paint, and hopefully have paint on him in the next few days and have him ready to go. Real bad gaps right in here. You guys can see that from the assembly. So I've also got his base at least roughed in. Typical cork-like base, nothing too special there. The idea is Molg is going to be right on top of this base, marching his way across the field. So I'll be doing some putty work on the base tonight and getting that all ready to go and taken care of. So one thing about cork basing that is kind of interesting, I throw a lot of putty on my cork bases so that they don't look very much like cork. It takes a little bit of work, but in the long run it definitely pays off. After I broke these pieces up and kind of stacked them on and glued them on, I then covered the whole thing in white PVA glue. So so it's actually quite durable, quite strong right now. And that'll be really nice when I go to paint it, because instead of the paint soaking into the cork, it's going to sit on top, and it's not going to take nearly as much paint to get it done. So that's kind of one of the advantages that I'm looking for. So anyway, so let's start with the Cephalyx Army. Before I get into some of the putty work, I want to talk about color scheme and how that's going to play out, and just doing what I've been doing on all the other tutorial videos I'm doing is we'll start on a piece of paper here. Just going to label this Cephalyx Army, and when this army is finished being painted, and the winner of the auction, along with all the painted miniatures, I'll send these cards out as well, so that whoever does win will also have all the paint recipes needed to replicate the color scheme if they so choose. Looks like real quick I need to flip my camera here because the words were backwards there, so that should look better now. Sorry about that, guys. Hope it wasn't too big of an issue for you there. Just set that up. And we'll focus that a little more too. It was a little out of focus. There we go. All right. So what am I thinking on this Cephalyx army? My basic idea that I want to do, we'll use the dredge here to kind of explain my color scheme, is I want to have kind of a greenish, grayish, zombie colored skin tone, something in a light green, maybe with some going into some dark brownish blue colors for the shadows and coming up to more of a light gray for some of the highlights. The cloth here, his little belt that he's wearing here, I'm hoping to do that in a really, really dark purple. And I want to, some of you guys might have saw the post that I put on my Facebook page of the color purple that I'm wanting to replicate. I want it to be really dark, really black, with very, very sharp highlights. So that's kind of the basic color scheme I'm looking to replicate on these big guys here. As far as metal goes, I'm going to go with a dark, rusty colored metal. I'm also really going to emphasize the gore aspect with this army. So you know, this guy's weapon here that is going to be sitting on his arm. I'm really going to play up the blood splatter on these weapons, and then also on the bases too. You guys can see on the camera that I do have the arms pinned, but they're not magnetized, and I'm not setting it up to have them be customizable. Once the army's done being painted, these miniatures are going to be set. You're not going to be able to swap the arms out or the heads out. That's just to make things a little easier on me and make this process go a little quicker. So that's the idea of the color scheme that I'm wanting to do there. As far as that skin color goes, I'm kind of branching out here. I'm trying something new with this army. I've picked up on the recommendation of, well, not so much the recommendation, but I've been researching a lot about airbrush paints, and I do a fair bit of airbrushing. Usually I just use either Vallejo or P3 paints and then thin them down. But a lot of people seem to really like these Badger miniature airbrush paints. I'm going to give it a try and see how they go. So I was able to pick up the set of them. It wasn't too expensive, and we'll try it out on the Cephalyx army and see what we're going to do. You know, so what I'm hoping to do is come up with the color scheme tonight and play with these colors a little bit and figure out more or less what are the ratios I'm going to need to go with to get the color that I want. So the first thing I'll start with is the miniature air pestilence flesh. So I'm going to put a drop of that on the card. Just giving it a good shake for a second here. And it's pretty darn green and might serve to be a good base coat. Let's see how it thins out here. And it's not a bad color. Like I say, it's a little greener than I wanted, maybe. I was looking for something maybe a little more pale. So let's try a mixture. Let me just look at a couple of these colors here. Let's try adding a little rotten wood to that. Let's try a 50-50 mix of the rotten wood and pestilence flesh. For you 40K players out there, this is a great looking Nurgle color for a Chaos Army. It looks pretty darn close to what you would typically see, I think, on a 40K model. I almost wonder if that's what Badger was after when they developed these, was marketing it towards those guys. So anyway, we're going to add a drop of that there, and then add a drop of the pestilence flesh. Let's see what that looks like. Water on my brush, mix it up. It definitely is a little bit more of a pukey type color. Definitely a little lighter, a little more pale, and are not quite as vibrant of a color. A little bit more of a muted color. Little too yellow, I think, for what I'm after. So let's try this. We'll go with dusty ground, miniature dusty ground. We'll add a drop of that to the green and see what that does for it. I'm guessing that's probably going to be the color I'm looking for right there. If this ends up being the right color, I would imagine the pestilence flesh at the top there would be the first step of my shadow. And again, a lot of this is going to, flesh stuff will be applied via airbrush. So, so not too concerned about blends and whatnot right now. And you know what? I'm actually going to do a 2-to-1. Add a second drop of the green. So that's 2 drops pestilence green, 1 drop dusty ground. And yep, I think that's the color I want right there for the flesh. I like that. Yeah. Nice and muted, pale, sickly looking color. That's what I'm wanting right there. So we're looking at a 2-to-1 pestilence flesh, dusty ground, and the badger color. All right. So that's going to be the base coat for the skin. As far as the shadow for that, when I go to shade that down, I'm almost thinking something like adding a little thornwood green, P3 thornwood green, into that base color. Might actually produce a nice shadow. Just a second here, guys. Shake this up a little more here. Got a little bit of a clog in my dropper bottle here for a second. Let me clear it real fast, guys. One of the joys of the live show here. No editing. This is real. This is hardcore painting, guys. You don't have the luxury of that edit button to clear up when stuff like this actually happens. Yeah, I just had a little bit of a clog. I had to clear there. Much better now. So we got a drop of thornwood green, and then I'm going to take a drop of this base color here that I made up, the 2-to-1 pestilence flesh, dusty ground. Mix that together. That's not bad. Nice pale, sickly looking brown. Let's take a little more of this green off. Just add a little more to it. That's not a bad shade color. Get a little bit of an olive drab there. I think that'll work really well next to the pestilence flesh as a shade color. That's going to work out quite nice, I think. Now, as far as the purple color goes, I've been talking with a couple of buddies of mine, a couple paint buddies, and I really want that purple to look dark. So just label this so I don't forget. Alright. So I really want the purple to actually look pretty darn dark. And so I've picked up a couple of colors from Vallejo Game Color, Hextlichen and Warlord Purple. I saw an army at the IMC this past weekend using these colors, and it was a beautiful, beautiful purple color. Really, really quite liked it. But I think it's a little too bright, though these colors might work out well for the highlight. But I still want that dark base color of this fabric on this army to have a little bit of a purple hint to it. So I was talking to some of my paint buddies, and what we came up with trying here is a mixture of, I'm going to try out a mixture of coal black, sanguine base, and beaten purple. And right now I'm going to try a 1-to-1 mixture of all three. And then we'll see how that looks. I'm sure you guys can hear the little agitators rolling around in my background there. This is what I use in my dropper bottles as agitators. They're 6mm round lava beads. They're not going to affect the nature of the paint at all. No rusting, no breaking down, nothing like that. And they have enough mass to them to actually get the job done when it comes to mixing the paint up. So they work pretty well. Now this color will be airbrushed on for the most part. For example, on the Warcaster's robe here, I would probably airbrush this base color all over it, and then go into the cracks here with the actual black color to add the shadow, and then put a bit of a highlight right across there of probably Hextlichen would be the first one, followed by Warlord Purple is the second one, and then I'd probably mix Warlord Purple and Menoth White base, or white highlight, and do a final third kind of extreme highlight, and then wash or glaze the whole area with a purple ink. That's kind of what I'm thinking I'm going to do, but a lot's going to depend on how this color looks, this purple color looks mixed up here. And that certainly does make a very, very dark purple. I mean, on the camera there, it's almost looking black. Really hard to see the color in that. Let me thin out the edge there so you can see just how much purple we got in there. Oh yeah, that's nice. That'll work really well. That'll work really well. That'd be the base color, and then probably just stick with Vallejo model color for the black shadow. Put that on the edge here. Purple is a color I really haven't worked a lot with. I'm actually kind of excited to see how this plays out. Purple and green actually are colors I really haven't worked a lot with, so I'm excited. This is going to be a fun project. Looking forward to it. So yeah, that black actually blends in there quite nice. Now let's take a look at the Hextlichen. Back off there. There you go, Hextlichen, and see how that pairs up for a highlight color. We'll come off this way with it. So you're definitely getting more of the purple in there. Oh yeah, that's going to work. That's going to work wonders right there. Yep. And again, even though I'm covering a lot of the space right here with the lighter purple, the highlight's going to be very, very thin, very extreme on the model. It's a That's a nice transition. That's going to be a really good transition for that fabric. Let's try this last one now, Warlord Purple. See how that looks as the highlight color. Right there, oh, that's a pretty thin color. I'm probably going to have to shake that a lot more when it comes actually down time to use it. Yep, I think we're getting somewhere. Blend this in a little more. Love being able to use this watercolor paper for this kind of stuff. It helps so much, really does. I'm going to add while the paint is still a little wet right there, just a quick drop of the Menoth White highlight. Work that into that base color. Makes very, very pink highlight, which is just okay with me because of what we're going to do when I'm done. Okay. Take that glare off of it. What do you guys think? Hope you like that. It's going to be a nice transition, going from black to a custom mixed purple, up into lichen purple, Warlord purple plus Menoth White highlight. And that just makes a beautiful purple transition. I really like that. That's what we're going to use right there. And then when this is dry, I'm going to take a purple ink. I have a couple of calligraphy inks around here. I've got one, it's a Violet Purple by Speedball ink. It's an acrylic water-based calligraphy ink. So can't do it right now while the paint's really wet. So when this dries, I'm going to wash it with a couple of different inks, because I've also got a couple different washes too. I've got an Army Painter purple wash. I've got a Secret Weapon purple wash. I got a Vallejo Game Color purple wash. So I'm going to try washing different parts of it and see which one I like the best. But I suspect the ink is probably going to give me the results that I want. And that's what's going to really make that a nice, vibrant purple all the way down. So awesome. Let's pair it up here with the actual flesh color that we're going to use. So that's going to all look really nice together, I think. Really, really nice. Very cool. All right, so set that aside for that to dry. Move these paints over a little bit here. Talk a little bit now about gap filling. When I am working on filling gaps, this is pretty much the only two tools that I'll use. Let's call it 4 tools. Sorry. I have a couple of old nasty looking dental tools, I think is what they are, or metal sculpting tools. So I use those. Nothing special there. I lubricate it with saliva. It works just fine. Sometimes I'll use the tip of my X-Acto knife blade to clean things up, push things around, sharpen things up. I'll use a old brush, again moistened with saliva or with water. And sometimes I'll use a toothpick on occasion when it calls for it, but I don't think I'm going to need any of these. The putty of choice that I use is called Procreate. These are Gale Force 9 empty storage containers that I was using, that I used to hold the 2 parts in. It's a 2-part epoxy. I've only just started using this within the last year. Honestly, I'm still trying to decide if I like it or not. It's a very hard putty, and it takes shape very well. It takes detail very well, but it's a lot harder than what I was used to. What I was working with before was was called Aves Epoxy Sculpt, and that stuff was really nice. It was really good for gap filling actually, because it was so soft, you could work it into areas really easy. But this Aves has also been nice, or excuse me, this Procreate has also been nice. But like I say, it's a really hard epoxy, and it's been taking some getting used to on my part of figuring out how to work with it the best way. So any of you guys have tips on working with it, I'd love to hear it. So to mix up the epoxy, you just need 2 parts, 2 equal amounts of the gray and the white. What I do is I make 2 balls like that. I'll then moisten my fingertips with a little bit of saliva, just makes mixing a little easier, and then squish it between my fingers nice and flat like that, and then I'll roll it and start twisting it and mashing it together. The idea is you just want it to be thoroughly mixed so that you get a nice, even, uniform, light gray color. Knead it between your fingers. Notice I'm only mixing a very, very tiny amount. This stuff, at least here in Idaho where it's really super dry, I've probably got about 30 minutes of working time that I like working with it at. Beyond that, it gets really hard and turns more clay-like in its substance. So I only mix enough just to be able to get me through 1 or 2 figures at a time. I'll then take one of the lids that I was using, and I'll roll a piece of it out like so, just so I've got a nice little sausage of it there. Okay, and we'll start with the Warcaster here. What I'm looking to fill on this guy is just right here. There's a bit of a gap back there, but where I pinned it, I just want that to be a little more flush so that it's not quite so number 1 weak of a joint, and number 2 noticeable. So I'm just going to jam the putty in there. Right now I'm not trying to make it look nice, I'm just trying to fill that gap. I would, this podcast has been really nice, or doing this PaintCast has been really nice. I've enjoyed it quite a lot. One of the things this sculpting kind of reminds me of is that I would love to see someone who is really good at sculpting do something live like this. I just think it would be amazing for them to do that. I know I've seen some time-lapse videos on YouTube of some sculptors going at it. Nothing miniature based, just people actually, professional sculptors or artists that are doing that. There's this one with the guy from The Bourne Identity, Matt Damon, where an artist does a sculpture of his face, and man, it's amazing looking, and the guy's got some serious math skills, and all he does it from is just photographs of Matt Damon, which is even more impressive. So this particular gap here, I'm not too worried about the final appearance of, as it's going to be very hidden when I'm done with it, and everything gets put together on it. So really I'm just filling space here and making it look smooth. You'll notice, let me zoom in on that a little bit there. You'll notice that right here in this area there is a little bit of a texture there, and it does look a little bit rough. And what I'm going to do is show you guys real quick how I smooth out my putty to make it look a little nicer. Take a brush, make sure it's wet, and just start painting it, applying moderate pressure. You want a brush that's old, that you're not going to necessarily be reusing a lot for painting. And just kind of keep working that left to right, up and down, back and forth, smoothly pulling on it, and eventually that water in the brush is going to help smooth out that seam. And then I'll just dab it with a paper towel, and you're left with a much smoother finish than what you had before. So he's done. Move on to the next one. Let's move on to one of these big guys here. Filling a little hole gap like this. Basically, the reason why that's there to start with is I pinned the leg to the knee, and the way I did that is I held the leg in place before gluing it and ran my drill right back straight this way into the leg, and then so I'd gone all the way through the knee and then into the calf and back here into the foot, and then put a what that did is that gave me the hole that lined up everything nicely. Then remove the foot, put the pin in the foot, put some glue in the hole, shove the pin in and the foot in, line it up, it's ready to go, and all I have to do is fill just this little bit of a hole there. In fact, if you catch it right just out on the light there, you can see that little bit of a sparkled edge right there. That's the end of the brass pin sitting there in the hole. So for this is simple. What I'll do is make a little bit of a smaller edge there, break a little bit off, and just let me give it to you from the side there. There we go. Just jam that into the hole, press down, and clean it up. And there you go. You've got one covered hole of where your pin used to be. Use the brush and just smooth that out a little more. And that knee is done. There's a little bit of a gap right in there. You guys can just barely see that. I'm not really sure if I'm going to paint that, because when you're looking at it from the side, or if I'm going to fill that, excuse me, or looking at it from how the miniature is going to be sitting, it's really not that noticeable, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. This gap up here, which is going to take a little more time and effort to clean up, is far more noticeable and far more worth the time that it's going to take to fix. So for this one, I'm going to just kind of eyeball the length that I think I'm going to need and thin out a really, really thin piece of that. And sometimes this can be a little squirrely. And I'm just going to kind of start right here. And just start setting this putty in the gap. And you notice the putty is really sticking to my finger right now and to my tool, and that's because it's not lubricated enough. I know guys that will use Vaseline to lubricate their tools. I've done that on occasion, and it does work fairly well actually, but it does leave a pretty oily residue behind. I mean, Vaseline is pretty slick stuff, and yeah, you know, you're going to clean your miniatures before you put them in, but I've just had some bad experiences, particularly with the P3 plastic models, where I have used Vaseline to help with the putty and then gone to prime them, and the primer's not stuck at all. And even if I was using a urethane based primer or water-based primer, it didn't matter. It just wasn't going to stick. And I honestly don't fully know what was causing it, but I've noticed it happen mostly on miniatures that I had used Vaseline on. So I'm not going to say don't do it, but I will say use caution with it. So everybody does things different. Just because you see me doing one thing one way doesn't mean it's the right way to do it, and vice versa. I think sometimes people get caught up in this idea of you can only paint one way, and I don't particularly buy into that. A lot of different ways to get a lot of different things done, and the more time you spend learning those different ways, I think the better a painter you are. Just kind of pushing that all around there, using the edge of the tool to pull it down and pull it flush with the surface there. This can be a fairly hard edge here along the deltoid area because it's going to create a hard shadow there. Just make sure you're flush in there. This guy has a lot of muscle texture, so a couple of creases in the flush will help emphasize that, but just take care not to make them too hard. You still want to mimic the surrounding area, and the detail on those creases is soft. Just looked up at the camera there. Gray putty on gray plastic. Not the best choice there. Alright, that looks pretty good for that initial bit there. Not too bad. Finish out the rest of this back of the arm here. Again, you're going to want another nice thin piece of putty. Looks like John's in the chat room. John is the owner of the Molg that I showed you guys a little while ago. He's wondering if he can get on voice chat with me tonight since I'll be working on his Molg. John, I didn't know you were wanting to hop on tonight. You don't need to, but I'm actually not set up for having someone on air with me tonight right now. To do that, I have to have a different camera set up, same camera, different angle set up, because right now the camera is actually inverted when I'm streaming without someone, and then when I go to do Google Plus chat with this camera set up, the image streams upside down. OBS allows me to flip the image, but the Google chat software does not allow me to flip the image. So I'm not set up for you tonight, but I apologize. I'm not going to be doing any painting though, mostly just talking about how the project's going to move forward and detailing the base and things like that. So I don't think it's a night that is going to generate too many questions. But if you do see something, feel free to put it in chat and we can talk about it. Email me when the broadcast is done here, and I can make sure and cover it the next time we're on air together. So, oh, Chris, I'm sorry, Chris. No worries, man. I'm not. Pcane didn't get primed, or Ecane didn't get primed this morning. So I like to let a model I prime sit for about 24 hours before I start painting it. And this morning, the putty that I was doing that I'd done on Ecane last night in preparation for the stream tonight wasn't dry yet, so he didn't get primed. So the soonest we'll probably be able to be on air together with Ecane will be Saturday when I do my stream Saturday night. Sorry about calling you John, Chris. All right, so that arm on the back side there, pretty much done. This crease is looking a little hard. Let me see if I can just soften that up just a little bit. Just use the edge of my putty knife here. Don't want to overwork it. That's my problem with when it comes to sculpting stuff. I tend to just overwork the joint or the seam that I'm puttying or putting together, and in the end it just looks worse than what it started off with. So okay, so that whole back of the arm is done there. Let me come onto the front of the arm there, right here in this area. Again, I'm going to need a fairly small string of putty. See what I've done there. That one's pretty tiny, and we're gonna grab that. This is one thing I don't like about the Procreate is it has a hard time sticking to a surface initially. I don't know if it's the way I'm using it or if it's the way it's manufactured or what. I just haven't used it long enough to figure it out. But sometimes I've just sat there for several minutes pushing and pushing and pushing and prodding it and trying to get it to lay flat, and it just won't stick to the surface. The Aves epoxy sculpt I used to use, that stuff would stick to anything, man. It'd stick to water. It was great. Probably wondering why I'm not using it now if it was so great. I just wanted to try something different. But now that I've been working with this stuff for about a year or so, I mean, it's great. I'm definitely going to use it for certain applications, but for gap filling and stuff, I think I'm going to go back to my Aves epoxy sculpt. I just really liked that stuff a lot better, and it came in more colors. And working like with a blue putty or an orange putty against a gray surface like this would actually be nice. It'd help you observe the problems of the of the joint that you're filling. Never tried liquid green stuff. Don't particularly want to try it either, to be honest. I've heard the question asked in chat was if I'd ever tried liquid green stuff. I've never tried it, not particularly interested in trying it. I found most GW products, like I've said before, to be difficult to work with. I mean, your mileage may vary and that's fine, but I've just never been really happy with them. So, and the local game shop where I buy my stuff at doesn't carry GW, so that also influences my decision as well. So, but I've talked to a lot of people who swear by the liquid green stuff. They say it's great. They say it does a wonderful job. And I say, that's great. I'm glad for you that you found something that works. Kind of stubborn with that, I guess. They have great models, Games Workshop. They really do. I love the way Space Marines look. I love the way some of the tanks look, and assault troops with those jump packs are just fantastic looking. That's what got me into tabletop games in the first place, was seeing a unit of uh, assault troops on the table, man. I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Um, that Tomahawk, the Space Marine Tomahawk, that thing is amazing. They just, from a modeling perspective, just got some beautiful, beautiful pieces and some great, great artwork and stuff. And I even kind of like the genre, the grimdark future. I mean, it's I like the idea of the Space Marine. I like the idea of what they stand for, and the defending humanity and burn the heretic and all that other stuff. That's probably why I play Menoth, because they're the closest thing that um, resembles that in some ways. But when it comes to their hobby products, I've never been impressed with them. I have used Vallejo, I think it's called Vallejo plastic putty before. Let's see if I got it right here. Yeah, here it is. I've used this before, and this is a pretty good stuff. I'll use it on bases sometimes to create texture and depth around pieces. Maybe I'll even bust some of it out tonight to show you guys how it works, because it's pretty good stuff. Just working this seam a little more on the inside here. I think a lot of that's going to be in shadow when I'm done, so I'm not going to be overly concerned with how it looks. But there you go. This guy is about done. See that whole deltoid shoulder area all cleaned up, all gap filled. Let this dry. Saturday morning I'll probably prime it, and hopefully I can start playing around with some color with him on Saturday to see if the colors I selected earlier on the show are going to work. So let me set this guy aside for a minute. Got a lot more to fill on a lot of other models, but you guys don't need to see me fill 3 of those Cephalyx guys up. So what I'll do is I'm going to switch to one of these guys here, and I'm going to be doing some gap filling right back here on these shoulders. The shoulders didn't seat very well in the model, and I also purposely repositioned the arms in different ways. So there's some gaps here that need to be addressed. Right there on the top too, you can see the gap that was left there. In fact, you can even see the pin right there. So we need to clean that up there. Kind of excited to paint this Cephalyx army too, because I'm somewhat interested in the aesthetic of them. I kind of like the horror show kind of appearance to them. They kind of have a freaky appeal to them that I like. so I'm not particularly interested in playing them. So it's kind of fun that I'm getting the opportunity to at least work on them and scratch that painting itch, because that's, if I was to collect Cephalyx, that's probably the only reason why I would, is so I could paint them, which probably means they would never get painted since I would never play them. So there you go. For those of you who are watching this video on YouTube with the delay after it's been posted, I do have on my Facebook page a post that has my calendar of the times that I am streaming for the month. So make sure and check that out. And if you can make it on, come on and watch the show live. Sometimes the questions are a little more relevant that way, because you can see what's being asked in chat. Also been thinking about setting up a Patreon account. Haven't quite decided yet if I want to do that or not. If I did, I definitely would make it so that those who contributed got something out of it. I was on Google the other day and I was reading that their chat sessions can have up to 100 people on them at once, and I think that would be kind of a good start to for people who contributed to a Patreon account, is having a monthly chat session. And I don't know if I could stream on that because of the bandwidth. It might be kind of difficult with that many people, but I definitely think, though, just an audio hangout could be a lot of fun, and cover different topics, different modeling topics, things like that. I don't know. The other thing is, I posted up on my YouTube page the other day about a 5 or 6 minute video that I did on pinning models, and I'd like to do more of that kind of stuff, but it takes time to produce those, takes resources to produce those, and you know, those are things that right now I'm trying to drum up while doing, you know, these streaming videos. You know, that's the whole idea, is to be able to, you know, keep doing what I'm doing here. You know, I know that this isn't going to make me, you know, millionaire, and that was never the intent. You know, the intent is the real intent is teaching people how to paint, teaching people how to do this stuff. I'm a real big believer in the philosophy of give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you feed him for his life. You know, I think that philosophy is very applicable to painting, and I think there's people out there who want to learn how to paint, and you know, I want to be able to help them out with that, and I want to be able to see them succeed. You know, but all that takes resources, all that takes money, you know, to make happen, and that's part of the challenge. So there you go. Arms are gap filled on him. You notice none of my guys are based, because what I'm going to be doing is drilling holes in the bottom of them, shoving a toothpick up there, and using that while I'm painting them. So that's that. The last thing I think I want to show you on the Cephalyx army, putty wise, is on this guy right here. If you look really close there, let me kind of zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. Right there on his shoulder, I actually had drilled all the way through right there, so there is a bit of a hole there. So I'm just going to gap fill, put some putty into that hole and smooth that out, so that way it's not so noticeable, because that would suck, having a miniature with a hole in the arm and then having it painted. Any of you guys seen the latest pictures of the Hydra that's on display at Adepticon? Holy cow, does that thing look awesome. Man, I can't wait to paint that. I paint, for Trevor from Chain Attack, I paint his Scorn for him, and we've already talked a little bit about the color scheme for that one. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'm excited to paint it. In fact, I haven't been this excited to paint his Scorn since I did a Mammoth for him, probably about a year or so ago. But most of his Scorn is painted now anyway. I think there's only just 1 or 2 units that I haven't done, or 1 or 2 figures that I haven't done yet for him. So anyway, that arm's done. We're ready to go. Move on from that. So let's bring the big guy up. Let's talk about Molg here. John wanted a standard color scheme on Molg. Holy cow, I'm gonna have to change my camera angle. He takes up the whole frame. Let me do that. Hold on a second, guys. Just gonna. That's a little better. Okay. So he wanted a standard troll color scheme on Molg. So I'm going to be using Troll Blood base, Troll Blood highlight. Okay, all those colors. You know, Bastion gray or Iron Hole gray up here in the granite. But the cool thing that he wanted was on the flag here, the tunic that Molg is wearing. He actually wants it to be painted like a Signar flag. So obviously I'll be doing Signar blue base, Signar blue highlight, Exile blue shadow, a little bit of Sanguine base shadow, that type of thing. But the thing is, as I've been looking at it, there's so many folds and creases there. I'm kind of struggling with where I'm going to put the Signar swan to show that it's a Signar flag. So right now, the idea is right down here in this area. That's probably where I'm going to paint the logo, and I'll probably paint it in such a way that, like, maybe, you know, here comes one wing, here's the swan head, and here's the other wing. So, you know, maybe 3/4 to half of it is actually visible, whereas the rest of it's been torn off. That's kind of the plan right now, but honestly, until I start painting and seeing how everything is laying out and flowing, I'm not going to decide for sure. But I think that's the best place to put it also, because as Molg sits on the base, he's going to be facing like that, you would actually see that Signar logo right down in here, and would be able to connect that. Oh yeah, that's what that is. It's a Signar flag. So anyway, with Molg, this is the new Molg cast from Privateer Press. So his whole torso, upper body, is resin, and then you've got white metal for the arms and for the legs, and then the mid torso right here. For those of you that have assembled Molg before, old Molg, this whole mountain area, stone area up top, was a separate piece, and you had a huge cavity inside there that was just marvelously fun to fill and work with. And luckily we don't have to worry about that on the new one. You'll notice too on Molg's arm, you see a drill hole there, and then on the other arm, a drill hole there. Did the same technique on Molg that I did with the Cephalyx dredges. I held the arm in place, drilled in, held the arm in place, drilled in, and then actually drilled a hole all the way through. So it's one solid pin all the way through here that's holding that arm in place. So I'm going to have to gap fill down here under these arms, right in there, gap fill under the waist there, gap fill around right here, around here, under this arm into here, and under the waist right into here. Maybe a little bit under the leg right here. I mean, none of that's going to be visible, but I think I'll gap fill it though to make it more durable to reinforce it. So let's start. I'm going to start right in here. Of course, you can't see right there because of the club. So maybe I won't start there. So let's start. Let's start in the back. That's a good place to start. We're going to start right here because you can see some of the muscles don't line up. So I'm going to have to actually reconstruct some of that whole body mass right there. And the nice thing about Molg and Trolls is I don't actually have to actually fill that gap and rebuild that muscle structure. I can just recreate a rock and put it right there. And other than those of you that are watching this podcast, you would be none the wiser knowing that that's what it actually was. So to create the rock, there we go. I'm going to cut off a little bit of a larger chunk here of the putty. And I'm just going to kind of jam it right there. Boom. There's a rock. Not a pretty looking rock yet because I do have to clean it up, but that is where it's going to go nonetheless. Nothing special here, you're just kind of creating some flat surfaces, trying to mimic what's going on around it. And then, like I say, once this actually gets painted, you're not going to know that it was putty. It's going to blend right in with the rest of the surrounding area. Molg is actually a pretty fun miniature to paint. I've painted several of them, and he's a fun model. He's got a lot of character on the table too. Good model for trolls. There we go. And so there is a rock that is just filling that gap right there, and a lot easier, a lot faster. We're going to do the same thing right here for this gap. I'm just going to build a rock there and probably build a rock there. We'll use slightly smaller pieces on this one though. And that's the problem right there that I experience with Procreate. It has a hard time sticking sometimes. Once it dries though, it doesn't have a hard time sticking, but it's this why it's curing sometimes. It just doesn't want to play ball, to coin a phrase. Kind of forming a little bit of a smaller rock right there. Clean that up so it looks more smooth. Add a crease there. Alright, there is another rock. And then we'll add a third one. Actually, I don't think we will. I think that's fine on that one. For this little hole in the arm here, do the same thing that I did on the knee on the other guy. Just kind of shove it into that hole as best you can. not going to worry too much about trying to smooth it out as far as blending it in with the skin, because again, Molg's covered with rocks, so if I just make it look like another rock, it'll be just fine. And there we go. That arm is about covered up there. Got a little bit of some filling right in here, right there on top. I think we can add a rock for that one. There we go. Work on this seam on the front of the shoulder here. Right here in this area. Rolled out a thin, round sausage-like piece. And I'm just going to work it in just like I was doing on the Cephalyx dredge, or monstrosity, excuse me. I've been calling it a dredge all night. I believe it's a monstrosity. Sorry about that for you people who are concerned with such things. And I feel like I'm actually getting to kind of the end of the working life of, or at least the working life that I like, of this particular putty. It's really starting to stiffen up on me a lot. Which is fine. I mean, I've only got a little bit left, so I'm only going to have wasted a little bit. Someone said my calling the large Cephalyx, large-based creature a drudge instead of a monstrosity was a monstrous snafu. Har har har. Yeah, and I really want to try and, on this shoulder here, really blend this in well, because this is such a prominent part on the model. And really, I think an integral part to how the highlight and the shadow is going to flow on this model, because this is all going to be highlighted right in here. And if there's if this putty's not super smooth through here, it's going to show up, and it's going to look bad. So really trying to smooth this out. Alright, that looks a little better there. Use a paintbrush here, wetted down, Try smoothing out some of these bits a bit more. I'm going to need a little bit of a stiffer brush though, I think. These blue brushes that I'm using here, these are my cheap Walmart brushes. I go through these 6 or 8 pack of them every couple months. But for this type of stuff where you would never dream of doing it with a nice sable brush, it actually is pretty helpful to have. All right, and that's that shoulder actually about done. That'll work. All right. Need to gap fill into that arm there. Let's do that before this putty is no longer usable. You know, and I've tried playing with the epoxy sculpt by changing the ratios of how much I mix to see if that prolongs usability time, you know, curing time. I don't know if you guys know that with green stuff. You can change the ratio of blue to yellow to either speed up or slow down how fast it cures. But on this Procreate, it doesn't seem, no matter what ratios I'm trying, I can't seem to get it to either speed up or slow down. It all seems to only go about a half hour, and then it becomes a little harder than I like it to be when I'm working with putty. So this stuff's an enigma to me. I'm sure there's those out there that love it, and I'd love to hear from you if you do, because I need to figure out what I'm doing wrong with it. I'm not going to be too particularly neat about this seam because once the model's in place, that's going to be an out of sight area. All right. And that's about as far as I'm going to take this tonight with Molg, at least on the broadcast here. For these last few minutes that I'm on, I see we've got a little bit of an active chat room tonight. So wanted to do the same thing tonight for a few minutes that I did the other night, and take any questions if anyone has them. So if you have them, just go ahead and start typing them up in the chat room there, and I'll go start going through them as soon as the delay catches up, and start answering them, and we'll spend the last 5 minutes or so doing that before I log off for the night. And if there is no questions, you all can just tell each other how much you love each other and how much you appreciate each other, and spread a little kindness in this world. Here's my attempt at trying to make the world a better place for the day. that will do for now. Let's see what we got in the chat room, if anything, tonight. Okay, so Metal Mug was second in modeling paint all day. The Metal Earthborn. Yeah, trying to arrange the metal hollow socket pit pieces up. Yeah, that was a rough build. I agree. Earthborn, yeah, I agree. The Earthborn wasn't all that difficult to build. If you can manage to get a brass rod pretty far up his fist that he's planting into the ground there, he's actually could be pretty stable and pretty easy to build. I do agree though with the comment that follows that about the Nis hunters. Holy cow, were they a pain in the ass. I hated assembling that one, man. My fingertips were so sore after pinning those guys. I couldn't grab anything for at least a week. It was rough. So I agree with that one wholeheartedly. I would love to see plastic Nis hunters. I think the world would be a better place if we had plastic Nis hunters. Let's see here. Metal Molg. Yeah, more talk about Metal Molg and how difficult he was to assemble. So here's a question. What is the advantage over green stuff and with the gray putty you're using, or was it just what you had handy? So green stuff, I don't know if you guys actually know the history on green stuff. It's actually plumber's putty, essentially. When you get a crack in a pipe, you mix up the two-part epoxy putty and cover the crack up, and it creates a watertight seal, hardens. It can be tapped, it can be sanded, it can be carved. So that's kind of where that started with. I've always found green stuff to be, personally, I mean, everybody is going to be different. Your mileage may vary, as I've said, but I've always found green stuff to be kind of plasticky, if that makes sense. It just seems to, for the way that I work, always seems to be really soft and just has more of a plastic-like feel to it. Some of the guys that I've seen who've done a lot of sculpting will mix like milliput into their green stuff to get a smoother texture and a more workable texture. I don't have a lot of experience carving and working with putty. My experience is just gap filling. This gray putty that I'm using is called Procreate, Procreate. You can get it at Cool Mini or not. My putty of choice is Aves Epoxy Sculpt, AVES Epoxy Sculpt. The reason why I'm using the Procreate, I've been using it now for about a year. I just wanted to try it out because I had heard a lot of good things about it. And while I definitely do like how sharp of an edge you can get with Procreate when you're sculpting and working, I do find that it gets a little hard, a little fast, and it's a little too hard for my liking. So I'm most likely going to go back to the Aves when I'm done here with this batch, because I haven't really enjoyed the Procreate too much. Let's see. That looks like it's about the only question. Oh, there it is right there. There's another one. In plastic, the plastics are driving me mad with mold lines in insane places. And I'm building some incinerators. What do you think? Shield on or off for painting? Keep the shield off for painting. I would not personally paint incinerators with the shield on. That's just me. I picked up, let me grab them real quick. They're right here on the shelf next to my desk. I picked up some incinerators in a trade when I first started playing Minoff a couple of, a year or so ago. And they have sat there. I think they're a cool model. Stat-wise, I know people aren't overly impressed with them, but they've sat on my shelf since I got them in trade. So there it is there, and you can see how much. You can see the dust on them. Lovely. You can see how much detail that shield covers up, and getting in there behind that shield to paint is just going to be a pain. and I would rather not do it. So if actually anyone wants to buy some incinerators off me, I'll sell them cheap. But yeah, I would leave the shields off if I were you. And in fact, when I painted my bastions for my Man-Off army, um, I actually painted them completely unassembled. All the arms, all the pole arms that they have, heads, all that stuff was just jammed on the end of toothpicks, and I painted each piece individually and then assembled at the end. So, have I ever painted an archangel? I'm just starting one now and wondering how you assembled you had yours. It seems very interlocked and hard to paint unassembled. Yeah, archangel probably in my top 3 colossal gargantuans as far as how it looks. Very cool model. I have painted 2 of them, and I'm thinking about getting a 3rd one to paint for myself. And I think it's a fantastic model. And that model, yes, I did actually assemble the whole model before painting it. I just felt that that was the best way to do that. It also depends a lot if you're using an airbrush or a hand brush. If you're using a hand brush, I recommend getting professional medical psychiatric help, because you're going to go insane. If you're using an airbrush, it shouldn't be too bad, and you should be able to get to all the places you need to get to for painting wise on that model. Beautiful model though, and I'm kind of looking forward to painting one again actually. So it's really not a pain to paint fully assembled. If you get a chance, let's see, what was Dorlath is the username on the screen there. If you get a chance, pick yourself up a small Lazy Susan. I've got 2 of them. I can't find the other one, but here's one that I have here. It's kind of hard to see it with the way my camera's set up. Let me pull my camera back a little bit. And you can see that's a small Lazy Susan. It's got about a 6-inch diameter across there. If you get yourself something like that and set the Archangel on there, based and ready to go, it wouldn't be too bad for you to kind of turn it as you paint. That way you can get into some of the tighter spots a little easier. Fire and Wind, you painted a Mountain King by hand. Lovely, good for you. Mountain King is still a cool model. Yep, I've got one in my personal stash here that I'm going to be painting here pretty soon, I think, too. It's a great looking model, I agree. Wow. Second Archangel that you're doing by hand. Well, good luck to you, buddy. Good luck to you. If you could find a spray can of paint that matches the base color at least just a little bit, you would save yourself a lot of time. So I'll just yeah, never said it's totally saying nice. So I'll go ahead and wrap up then for tonight. I'll give it a few more minutes, another minute or 2 to see if anything else comes in on the chat of any other questions. But as always, guys, if you have questions, feel free to email me, redmodeling@gmail.com. You can also hit me up on Facebook, Facebook.com/redmodeling. You're obviously here at my Twitch channel, so make sure you subscribe so you're notified when we got future broadcasts. And if you get a chance too, swing over to my YouTube channel and check out the videos that I've posted there, and like those if you make sure to hit the like button if you see something that you like in what I've posted. So other than that, guys, thanks for being on tonight. Appreciate it. Should be broadcasting again Saturday night about this time again. And hopefully we'll be doing some painting that night. I just thought it would be kind of fun tonight to do a little bit of color exploration with the Cephalyx army and do a little bit of putty work as well. So until we see you guys at the next broadcast, take care and happy painting.